Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Deku Married Toga, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The sky may as well be a black canvas tonight, the tiny stars and faded moon being no different from white specks yet to be painted over. Its natural darkness only gleams with a periodic hue of dark blue, the red side of a police car's flashing lights not radiating bright enough. Cool colors reflect off of smudged windows, shimmering in the night. The vehicle's sirens are off, leaving only idle radio chatter and the scrape of shoes against cement to fully confirm police are present. Detective Naomasa Scouchy and his subordinate, Sansa Tamakawa, duck under police tape that's meant to seal off the blood bank's entrance. Naomasa's eyes search the doorway for any signs of forced entry, but any chipped wood looks like it's due to being weathered than any other reason. Toshinori Yagi treads as slowly as humanly possible behind them, not wanting to disrupt them during their investigation. The dim lighting from inside casts a long shadow over sickly yellow walls. Where a receptionist would normally be to greet the men, sits a decaying desk with an empty seat behind it. There's a stray cigarette butt that's sitting in an ashtray which stopped burning, but there's also a lingering scent of smoke. The fumes settle on the tongue, leaving a bitter taste that sours when meshed with the smell of blood spillage wafting through the air. The soft crunch of glass between Toshinori's foot and the brown-tiled floor draws their attention to the ground. Large drops of blood gradually lead to even bigger puddles, almost like a trail. One could make the assumption that it's due to a person bleeding out, but shattered glass on the ground and missing vials from shelves tell a different story. Here, Naomasa digs into the pocket of his overcoat as he suddenly remembers something very important. Everyone put these on. The detective hands Tamakawa and Toshinori a pair of blue sanitation gloves so they don't contaminate anything before slipping on his own. Naomasa crouches down on one knee so he can make a closer inspection. Normally, it'd be the job of the CSI unit waiting outside to collect any remaining evidence. However, yellow markers that are placed indiscriminately lets him know they already sweep the building. It's just his job to go over whatever remains and to pick up the broken pieces, quite literally in this case. Naomasa gently takes a shard of glass, his fingers smudging the red bodily fluid that's on it. None of this has dried, so the heist must have been fairly recent. Tamakawa mutters Naomasa's thoughts aloud for him so Toshinori can get a sense of the crime scene too. Born with a quirk that gives Tamakawa cat-like attributes, he also shares some of the animal's qualities, such as heightened senses. The officer's nose flares as it catches another whiff of the smell drifting around. The cigarette smoke remaining present tells them not much time has passed and the fresh blood practically confirms it as a plausible assumption. We've got squad cars fanning the perimeter, something will come up if the perp is still in the area. Naomasa turns his head just enough to look at Toshinori so he can make sure the hero doesn't go to perform his own manhunt. When the blonde doesn't run off, the detective uses his knee as a brace to push himself back up before adding, "The chances that we'll find anyone are slim though, there's no certain way of knowing how much time has passed and how far one could get, especially if they're as elusive as the Tokyo Ghoul. I thought that the Tokyo Ghoul was more colorful with their crimes." Toshinori doesn't bother hiding the displeasure in his tone or the frown on his face. The lack of sanitation there is enough to make his skin crawl all on its own. There's no need to add the recollection of those victim images into the mix. You're right. Naomasa pulls at the latex around his wrist. While this particular AP does sync up with our perps, the glove comes off with a slight snap of whiplash. It doesn't match the Tokyo Ghoul's MO. Tamakawa chimes in with, "This might be a copycat of some sort," earning a collective look of mild amusement from Toshinori and Naomasa. The police officer's ears flatten as he becomes sheepish, only now realizing he made an accidental pun. Oh, or someone knew. He bashfully scratches the nape of his neck while shyly turning away from them. I would be inclined to agree. Each member of the trio whirl around to face the voice of a newcomer. Tamakawa is mostly startled by the stealthiness of a tall and slender man, whereas Naomasa and Toshinori are just bewildered. Once he steps out from the shadows, they begin to recognize him by his ragged appearance. The man wears a black outfit that's tucked in at his boots, no doubt meant to help him blend in with the night's atmosphere. The only distinctive features on his costume appear to be a wrap scarf and small utility belt. Otherwise, he could probably pass himself off as a hobo, what with his unkempt facial hair and shoulder-length bangs that partially hang over his face. Despite looking like he just rolled out of bed and still remaining to be worn out, the trio know better. This is a pro underground hero in their presence. Eraserhead's eyes look half opened and just as tired as he feels, but still hold a carefully calculative glare. The flat stare flicks from Tamakawa to Naomasa, although, I just so happen to have another plausible theory. Naomasa's shoulders sag as he lets out an exasperated sigh, almost like he's a deflating balloon. Please, Aizawa, I'm already annoyed enough as it is. The detective massages his forehead with his index finger and thumb as if he's trying to soothe an oncoming migraine. Don't go adding your theories to my frustration. Hold on. Tamakawa rests his hand on Naomasa's shoulder in an allaying manner. We don't have much to go off of here. It wouldn't hurt to get his professional opinion. The officer glances at Toshinori with a supplicating expression. Come on, let's hear him out. The blonde shoots his own glance at Naomasa, the two sharing a look that's somehow verbal enough for the detective to give in. Sighing again, but this time his shoulders rolling back in preparation for what's to come, Naomasa chooses to appease his subordinate by gesturing for Aizawa to continue. Eraserhead tilts his head in the direction that he wants them to follow before treading down an aisle of shelves. Leaking vials leave streams of blood that end up winding towards a pool of scarlet. It's almost like the epicenter of it all, several splattered footprints covering the tile there. Aizawa gives the others a moment to track the indentions towards an alley door, no doubt the exit that the perp used to leave. Whoever did this wasn't alone. The trio shoot Aizawa all sorts of perplexed looks. Noticing that they aren't entirely convinced, he explains. The footprints here are crossing each other. It's too much of an irregular pattern to only be one person, especially when it's overlapping the other's steps. His hand gestures in a lazy manner as an attempt to show them. Naomasa shakes his head while trying to stifle a groan. That doesn't prove anything at all. The perp could have just simply retraced their steps. He crosses his arms in an exaggerated display of disappointment before asking, Are you done wasting our time yet? Aizawa keeps his deadpanned expression while giving a wry response, No. I haven't gotten to the best part yet. The underground hero then casually uses his foot to nudge an evidence marker elsewhere. Before Naomasa can do any scolding or reprimanding, Aizawa points to the particular place that he moved it to. The shoe sizes vary vastly. The imprints are side by side for anyone to see that one is smaller than the other. There are two culprits minimum. Tamakawa covers his mouth with his arm, feigning a cough to cover up the huff of amusement he gets at seeing his superior outsmarted. Even Toshinori looks like he's trying to keep a grin at bay, though his is more likely to be part of the jesting that comes with friendship. Naomasa throws his arms up in irritation. Okay. You've made your point. Before crossing him again, that doesn't prove it was the Tokyo Ghoul though. As a matter of fact, it only further suggests that it wasn't. As far as we know, he's acted alone and solely operates as a vigilante of sorts. Which leads to my belief that he was coaxed into doing this. Aizawa gives the detective a sly glance before addressing Toshinori and Tamakawa. As mentioned, the Tokyo Ghoul has acted alone, picking off criminals during the night. It started with low-tier thugs, ones that were hard to decipher as crooks when their first offense was the same night that they died. As such, these criminals were simply purse snatchers or muggers. Our ghoul then slowly escalated to higher-ranked villains, like a predator finding its place in the food chain. Your point, Aizawa, Naomasa interjects without hiding his annoyance, an ever-present scowl on his face. My point is that we prayed the ghoul wouldn't find its place in the food chain since that's likely even higher than its present place. Aizawa fixes Naomasa with his own scowl. This is a step down. The prayer is answered. Now you have to ask yourself, what could have stopped something like that just when it's about to reach the highest peak? The answer is a significant other. Naomasa gives a dry laugh that's just short of being sardonic. Give me a break. You're saying the Tokyo Ghoul has a lover. The rhetorical question is meant to be condescending but only ushers Aizawa to further explain. Eraserhead points at the footprints again, meaning to draw attention to the shoe sizes in particular. It might not just be fitting the foot that makes this difference so conceivable. It would also make sense for one of these to fit a female whereas the other fits a male. Aizawa catches the rectangular eyes of Naomasa with his flat ones. The other possibility for why these shoe sizes are so small brings me back to another theory I had. If I'm not mistaken, we might be dealing with children. A kid. Toshinori is unable to refrain from making an outburst of disbelief. The brooding look that crosses the blonde's gaunt features don't do the right amount of justice in conveying his inner turmoil. He's heard of troubled youth, but this is beyond that. As the symbol of peace and Japan's #1 hero, he feels like he's personally to blame for such a travesty. How could a kid? He chokes up on his own emotions before overpowering them with an angry shout, a child. How could someone so young do such gruesome things? It's easy for children to become misguided. Such underdeveloped minds may think they have no other choice. Aizawa's expression softens with his tone as he tries to placate the blonde. It might not seem like much of a change in direction, stealing versus murder, but we can thank whoever gave them an alternative. It's better than nothing. It starts as a slow shake, but slowly increases in speed. Naomasa might just suffer a concussion from turning himself into a life-size bobblehead. You are reaching too far on this. It's only a hunch with no real justifiable proof. It's too sudden and it's far too drastic of a shift in motive. The detective groans before adding, I'll throw you a bone and admit there's a likelihood of 2 culprits here, but that's all. Quit while you're ahead. There are quirks with drawbacks worse than others. Aizawa reaches into one of the various pouches on his utility belt. I have dry eye every once in a while that can lead to vision deterioration if not treated. The underground hero applies the eye drops that he pulled out. Someone with gills may be required to constantly stay submerged in water in order to survive. There's a possibility that the Tokyo Ghoul has a similar drawback. It's not uncommon for quirks to show signs of aggression or to have cannibalistic urges either. Aizawa blinks his eyelids a few times once he's finished before putting away the drops. If we truly are dealing with a kid in this scenario, it's even more likely for them to believe this is the only option. Quote. Until now, Toshinori comes to the same conclusion as Aizawa once he mulls it over. If the child needs blood or something of the sort to stay alive, then taking from here instead of killing a person means they have no real desire to harm anyone. A small but hopeful smile starts to form on the hero's face. Tamakawa purrs in satisfaction, equally enthused by the potential of a breakthrough in the investigation. He stops to scratch behind his triangular ear before asking, does that mean we should scratch out the vigilante classification now? He winces when he realizes he made another unintentional pun. Nobody seems to notice besides Aizawa, whose eyes sparkle with more amusement than his expression. One night doesn't mean the rest will be any different. Naomasa supplies his uncertainty with a shrug. We hadn't had a vigilante as violent since Stendhal, the only difference being that Psycho was short-lived and mainly used a katana. Aizawa hums in agreement before contemplating the rest out loud. Most vigilantes don't cross the line of the law any further than illegal quirk usage. Adding manslaughter is too black. They prefer the gray area that they created in between the white. And where exactly is the line that's supposed to be drawn between those colors? Toshinori solemnly asks from his sulking disposition. What's the difference between a vigilante or a villain if killing isn't it? The controversial question might seem rhetorical to the underground hero, detective, and police officer, but Toshinori genuinely wants the answer when it involves a kid. Tamakawa's ears bend as he takes the blonde's words into consideration. You're asking if theft is more of a step over that line than murder. It's more of a grim statement than a question at this point. The cop glances in the direction of his superior, hoping Naomasa might have the answer. Even the detective looks lost in thought, his pensive gaze directed at the floor. As absurd as that thought might seem, it isn't completely illogical. There have been justifiable murders, ones done in self-defense for instance. When put bluntly, maybe there is no line, maybe it's just one big splotch like the blood covering the floor. The real difference in villainy or vigilantism may be whether you love seeing your reflection in that puddle or recoil in disgust. Aizawa finds no real answer for anyone except, who knows what'll be the worst thing the ghoul does if they do become a full-blown villain. The crisp shadows shrouding them start to burn away as light gleams in. Vials shimmer under the sun's glare, naturally brightening the room little by little. Hues of orange blend with the red tint, creating a vibrant color that welcomes the morning. Toshinori turns towards the light, closing his eyes as he relishes in its warmth. The blonde bathes in it, the frown on his face curling upwards only slightly. When he opens his eyes, his blue reflects the sky. Clearing his throat to gather the other's attention, he throws a thumb over his shoulder in order to excuse himself. It's about time for my morning commute. I should get going. He checks his wrist for a watch that isn't there before adjusting the sleeve to cover it. Oh. Naomasa snaps out of his cognition when he notices the hero is leaving. I'll give you a call if anything changes and send the rest in the mail then. The detective waves a farewell to his friend as the blonde backs away. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Naomasa, Toshinori shouts over his shoulder as he turns and jogs out the door. Once out of sight, the blonde ducks into an alley where nobody can see his transformation and becomes the pro-hero acknowledged by everyone as All Might. Fragile limbs buff up in a matter of seconds, a massive grin spreading across Toshinori's face as he triples in size. The hero takes flight, bounding over buildings in a single hop, guffawing all the way into the troposphere. This is going to leave me an unholy amount of paperwork to fill out, Naomasa complains as he rubs the bags that are beginning to develop under his eyes. While the creases and wrinkles are nothing compared to Aizawa's, the detective wouldn't be far behind. Be sure to fax it over to me when it's finished. The underground hero remains monotone as he treads in the same direction that Toshinori went. Revealed to have been concealed under the capture cloth that's wrapped around his neck and shoulders like a scarf, Eraserhead pulls a pair of yellow goggles over his eyes. The specialized lens leaves only a few slits in them, hiding the direction of his gaze. On his way out, he gives the detective a bidded farewell. In the meantime, I've got another lead that I intend to follow up on. Tamakawa places his hands on his hips as he surveys the empty space. Looks it's going to be one of those kinda days. His whiskers bend with his half-hearted smile. Naomasa sighs in predetermined exhaustion, matching the fellow policeman's attitude. In that case, he pulls off the other sanitation glove before tucking his hands into his overcoat's pockets. I'm gonna need a cup of coffee. When Anteiku opens its doors to Musutafu in the morning, wave after wave of customers come bustling in for a taste of Java. Lines form out the door sometimes. There's been the occasional surstance of people bringing lawn chairs to seat themselves during the busy hour. This is another one of those instances. To call it a breakfast rush would be downplaying the crowd. Servers run back and forth as they scramble to serve customers their morning due. Amongst them is Akitani Mikumo, one of the best workers Anteiku has to offer. The boy weaves in between tables as he sets down cups of tea or mugs of steaming coffee. Once the tray that he carries is empty, he swivels back around to walk briskly towards the kitchen for another round. There's a customer that asks for napkins on the way, to which Akitani politely obliges. A fortunate waiter wouldn't come across any extra interruptions, but this particular teen finds himself in the most unfortunate of predicaments all the time, so he's stopped once again. Thin arms wrap around his midsection, just above his waist and below his chest. The P-form pulls him into what must be a hug from behind, something soft pressing against his back momentarily. Startled by what feels like a sneak attack, Akitani breaks loose from the grip and spins around to face whoever grabbed him. Surprise! A familiar blonde greets him with a squeal of joy. Himiko, Akitani shouts in shock once he recognizes the P-girl. The boy glances in each direction as he realizes they're standing in the center of the cafe. In an attempt to avoid getting waylaid, Akitani gently takes Himiko by the wrist and guides her to a less populated corner. Can't you see we're packed? I've got to work. I can't get fired. He keeps his voice down and tone low in the effort to keep a low profile. But I'm bored, Akitani, Himiko pretends to whine as her lip curls into a feigned moo. I just might regret giving you the address to this place, Akitani jokingly mumbles to himself as he shakes his head in bewilderment. From the single eye that peers out from his overgrown hair, he notices a small table meant for two has been cleared. Here, have a seat and just wait. I'll bring you a cup of coffee. Akitani gestures to the chairs so she can see them too before backing away so he can flee into the kitchen. Himiko plops into the seat with a small huff. The girl had so much fun the previous night that she couldn't wait to spend another one with the boy. What Himiko assumed would be a cure for whatever boredom started stirring in her stomach only left her with even less to do. There's nobody sitting in the chair across from her to talk with, there's no television set mounted up anywhere, there's not even any music playing from a radio. Left with nothing else to do, she starts playing with the sugar packets left out for customers to use. She picks through the pink and white, finding those colors cuter than the light blue ones. Once those run out, Himiko slumps in the chair as boredom overwhelms her again. Akitani takes a swig from his own coffee before grabbing the one for Himiko, a to-go cup with a lid just in case she were to leave or accidentally spill it. He hadn't bothered with any sugar or specialties, having not gotten the chance to learn her preferences yet. Instead, Akitani snags some creams and sweeteners for her to personally choose from. The boy scampers back to the blonde, flashing her a benevolent smile once she sees him turn the corner with everything tucked under his arms. Even when he's swamped with other customers, he tries his best to serve her specifically. I didn't know what you'd want, so I just kinda grabbed everything on hand. He gives her a diffident chuckle while sheepishly scratching the back of his head. AAWW, Akitani, you shouldn't have. The coy teasing leaves them both blushing. When the flushed faces lose a bit of their heat, Himiko's coy smirk forms into a grin. She shows him a vial of blood that was taken from the previous night. See. I brought my own blend. Akitani's exposed eye widens in an initial shock, the recognition evident in the small twinkle of his iris. The anxiety that comes from panic makes him shoot a worried glance over his shoulder before bringing his focus back to the vial of blood. Try not to let anyone see that, he whispers in a voice laced with concern. Himiko rolls her eyes like he's being overdramatic. Relax. Nobody is gonna notice. The red liquid pours into the cup of coffee like an ordinary sort of creamer before she stashes away the empty vial. It's not like anyone will be able to tell what it is either, she says in reassurance while stirring the concoction with a spoon. You can never be too careful. Akitani shoots another worried glance towards the people behind him before gritting his teeth in what looks like resistance. The pupil of his eye seemingly shrinks as it turns a shade similar to the blood that was mixed with coffee. There's a dry swallow from the boy as it returns to normal. Besides, it's more meant for me than them, he timidly mumbles in admittance. Himiko gawps a little as she realizes they're more similar than she previously thought. You get an urge for blood when you see it, don't you, Akitani-kun? She cranes her neck as she tries to get a closer look at him. His eye continues to display a constant shift of appearance, the only way to truly recognize Akitani's inner struggle. Any ordinary glance at the boy wouldn't uncover his hidden bloodlust, but Himiko is able to fully notice this side of him. She's able to fully understand it since she empathizes with this desire too. It's okay to give in. Here, have some. She slides the cup towards him while trying to make her voice as soothing as possible. Akitani stares at the drink with reluctance before the gaze flicks back to Himiko, almost like he's checking for permission. The hesitance doesn't last very long though, he doesn't even wait to get that confirmation that she thought he was seeking. Akitani snatches the cup from the table, taking a big swig of it, practically chugging it. When he's finished, he lets out a satisfied sigh, a bit of liquid dripping from his lips before his tongue laps it up. Himiko's mouth continues to hang open as she watches his every move. It's almost like he's constantly starving, completely deprived of what he wishes to taste. The small content he has from what he swallows though, she sees it in his features. A grin begins to form on her face, starting small and stretching bigger. The girl fully understands now, seeing herself in the boy. Two identities that contradict one another, the conflicted mind that draws them together just as much as it brings them apart, they both share this quality. She's snapped from her musings by the chime of the coffee shop's front door. A man wearing a tan overcoat takes off his matching hat once he steps inside, ever the gentleman. The green tie he wears with a pair of slacks and dress shoes makes her brush him off as a mundane businessman. She'd much rather keep her attention on Akitani Mikumo, the interesting specimen that is giving her an apologetic look. I'm sorry. I've got to take this customer. He points a thumb over his shoulder in the plain guy's direction. Thanks for letting me try your coffee blend. The joke that's meant to be light-hearted isn't very funny when his voice cracks with the lack of sincerity. She can tell that the expression on his face is fabricated, that it isn't a real smile like the one she had seen those previous nights. No, beneath the mask that he's made, Akitani wears a face of self-inflicted shame. Himiko wants to tell him so much, that there's no reason to be ashamed, but he's already walking away. Naomasa waits patiently for a worker to notice him, hands in pockets and head down as he contemplates the crime scene that he just left. Aizawa left him with a lot on his mind and the morning rush of customers at Anteiku leaves him with the time to go over it all. The thought of two culprits being responsible for the blood bank heist is enough of an issue, but linking it with the Tokyo Ghoul and saying they have a partner makes it a whole lot worse. In all honesty, Naomasa would prefer to make this robbery an entirely different case file and let it collect dust on a shelf with no real resolve to close it. The complications that come with tacking on an accomplice to the elusive ghoul outweigh a simple burglary. The detective bites his tongue like he spoke the thought out loud, enough to cause pain but not enough to draw any blood. A tide of shame washes over his mouth instead, cleaning it out like his saliva had been doused with soap. There was a time when he would never think about dismissing a case, no matter what it is. Naomasa had always been the most honest cop on the force, he had even been dubbed with the nickname, True Man, and it wasn't just because of his lie detection quirk. Whether it was from all the stress that comes with trying to catch the Tokyo Ghoul or how many years he's had on the job, he can't help but wonder what happened to himself. A thought that isn't so easily dismissive crosses his mind. Is there a difference between the idini of that noble detective called True Man and Naomasa Scouchy? Toffee nut, right, the detective is drawn from his rumination by a familiar-looking barista. Whether it's done deliberately or not, half the boy's face is covered by his dark shade of hair, one might say it's the most defining feature that keeps him from looking plain. An emerald eye peers up with what can only be described as kindness, seemingly waiting on the detective's response. Ah, yes. Naomasa is taken back by the waiter's ability to know what he was going to order. How'd you guess? Your quirk, a genuine curiosity that has to do with the detective's instinct to uncover mysteries sparks from it. In retrospect, it wouldn't be that bizarre if the server had something along the lines of precognition, it'd make sense for a business such as this to hire him for it specifically. The boy's laugh sounds light-hearted to the unobservant ear, but the faint sense of gloom isn't covered completely, he wouldn't be winning any Emmys this year. I don't have a quirk as cool as that. His voice is distant but rises in pitch as if it comes closer when he focuses back on Naomasa. I only knew your order because I remembered it from last time. Suddenly, it clicks as to why the waiter looks so familiar. Naomasa refrains from slapping a palm into his face, feeling a tug of guilt for not remembering the boy's name. The kid had served him and Toshinori just the other day, yet the detective had completely forgotten. Ah, forgive me. He gives the barista a slight bow to apologize. The gesture is mostly meant to serve as a distraction though, it's the detective's attempt to stall for time as he tries to recall the boy's name. Running a hand through his equally black hair, minus the gray strands, he's forced to surrender with a bashful smile. I completely forgot. I'm sorry. He lingers on the end to let the waiter know that he's asking for their name. Akitani Mikumo, and it's fine, I'm pretty forgettable when we live in a world that's filled with heroes and villains. He brushes it off with a whimsical shrug. Not at all. Naomasa waves his hand to reassure the boy. I've just had a lot on my mind as of late. The detective finds himself running that same hand through his hair again as he awkwardly chuckles. Ah, I see. Hence the coffee. Akitani stands on his toes with some newfound spunk in his demeanor, assuming you're still craving that toffee nut, of course. Naomasa gives the barista a small nod, that would be perfect, before clearing his throat and holding out his hand. How rude of me, I forgot to introduce myself. Akitani takes and shakes it. I'm Naomasa Scouchy. Nice to meet you, officially this time. Akitani gives the detective a bright smile before turning around to search for a table where he can be seated. The waiter falters for a moment, as if there's something missing in the far corner of the cafe. He recovers quickly though, maintaining the smile on his face and gesturing to a free space. Right this way, Scouchy-san, he says whilst leading the detective to the table. Naomasa arches an eyebrow, noticing the single spoon that sits there. It might just be from some kinda jam or something, but he swears there's a red stain on it. Akitani snatches it away rather hastily too, not even making a comment about its existence. The detective lets out a heavy sigh, letting go of what must just be paranoia. Of all the things that I could have picked up from Aizawa, he mutters under his breath with a shake of his head. The glassy sky had just wept over desolate streets, leaving the air still and heavy. Tricklets of water continue to hit the ground, an indirect result of a strong breeze causing damp trees to sway from side to side. With the passing storm, it's like the aftermath is daring anyone to peer outside. There's even a percussion of chirping birds, joined by the barking of stray dogs in the distance. However, in the heart of Musutafu, the darkest is never just before the dawn. Water that had been built up within the street's various potholes shimmer under the glow of bright yellow street lamps. Traffic lights indecisively switch between the colors of green, yellow, and red, the mechanism seemingly operating like a laggard disco ball. Among apartment windows that have their blinds drawn down, there's the occasional orange or white hue that illuminate both sides. In the particular window of a convenience store on that street corner, the glass glimmers with the faint tint of a television's reflection. It's an older model, the cheap box set only capable of broadcasting whatever channels its wiry antenna can pick up. If you squint hard enough at the smudged screen, you might be able to make out the grainy news station though. The reporter's voice barely carries over the static, currently approaching the 2-year anniversary in which the water hose duo made their heroic sacrifice. A brief pause follows as an image is brought up beside him. A man and a woman share proud smiles in the photo, both wearing bright red life vests and white helmets that are equally radiant. They each have visors and snorkels attached, tailored to their water-themed costume design. The heartbreaking part of the memoriam is the young child in between them. The small boy gazes up at his parents, a wide smile on his face as he holds one hand each of his mother and father. The same hue of red as his parents' life vests, he wears a hat with 2 golden spikes protruding from it, the cap covering naturally pointed black hair. Unlike his parents, he isn't wearing any life vest or hero costume, just a white collared shirt and dark blue jean shorts. The newscaster adjusts his pair of square-shaped spectacles, the glasses having slid down the bridge of his nose when he hung his head in solemn respect. A small curl drops in front of his forehead, ruining the slick-back style of his straw-colored hair. The man's most prominent feature, though, is the horn that's protruding from the left side of his head. The right side looks to be filed down. The reporter has noticeable facial wrinkles that broaden when he frowns. Let us all share a moment of silence. It's a small murmur only heard if you were to raise the audio's volume. It's rather fitting that he wears a suit and tie, as if he's attending a funeral service. The outfit consists of a dark blue blazer and a pale pink shirt that's buttoned to his neckline. He tugs on the brown tie as he clears his throat, moving on to the next part of the water hose tribute. Each anniversary, civilians that were saved share a few words about the honorable duo which saved their lives that fateful day. This year, however, we reached out to comrades of the water hose team. Speaking on behalf of people everywhere, is the symbol of peace himself. All Might. The broadcast then transitions to footage of the number 1 hero. All Might stands in front of a pier located just outside of Musutafu, but the camera is solely focused on him. Per usual, the hero has his blonde hair swept backwards, with the exception of 2 distinct tufts sticking up from his head that lean slightly to either side. Currently, he's wearing his Golden Age uniform, one that resembles a typical Western comic-styled superhero while showing off his muscular physique. The bodysuit is decorated with a color scheme that varies from red and blue to yellow and white. It ultimately ends up sharing a design reminiscent to that of America's flag. The red portion mostly covers his chest, creating a symbol that resembles the letter Y. A white diamond is at its center, with white lines stemming from it that trace all the way to his back shoulders. Other than a pair of winged gloves and golden boots with a matching belt, the rest is as vastly blue as the ocean. The symbol of peace is never seen without a broad smile, yet, this one appears much more subdued. The poignant look in his eyes is impossible to see on such a low-quality monitor, but it's there looking directly into the camera. He starts by saying, "I didn't personally know the water hose duo. However, I can proudly commemorate their actions. If I had been in the same position as them, I would have done exactly the same thing." His eyes divert from the camera as he mulls over his next words. Being a hero isn't always about beating the villain. The blonde raises a fist so that he can clench it on screen. It's also about saving as many lives as possible. That's what the water hoses did that day. They earned the right to be called heroes. What they did was admirable. They died honorably. The video feed then switches back to the studio as the reporter runs a hand over his head, smoothing back the hair that had started to crimp. Additionally, we arranged for the symbol of peace to share his condolences with the water hoses' next of kin. Unfortunately, their child denied our proposition and we were only capable of speaking to his current guardian. The studio was requested to maintain discretion when it comes to the matter, but we were fortunately granted permission to share the following clip from the conducted interview. New footage takes hold of the screen on cue. A woman stands beside All Might in what appears to be a forest of some sort. the distinct difference from a normal woodland location being how the trees look to be tall and wide as city structures themselves. She's instantly recognizable as a pro-hero too, being the lead member of a team called the Wild Wildcats. Her costume stays true to the name, consisting of gloves that resemble cat paws and red markings beneath her eyes that mimic whiskers. She has maroon-colored hair that's styled into 3 bangs going across her face. Her large ruffled skirt and tail share a similar hue of red, along with the sleeveless top that's decorated by several straps and a bell. The heroine bows deeply to the symbol of peace. On behalf of my nephew, I'd like to say sorry for his ill mannerisms in refusing to speak with you. I'd like you to know that I don't believe it's anything personal, he just doesn't wish to be associated with any heroes as of late, myself and my teammates included. No need to apologize. It's quite understandable. All Might places an assuring hand on her shoulder that looks comically oversized in comparison to the woman. Then, the buoyant tone becomes much more subdued, better matching his sanguine smile. The young lad must still be going through a lot. Losing his parents at such an age. It's a good thing that he has his aunt to take care of him. All Might tenderly pats her shoulder as a form of reassurance. The pixelated image of All Might gets covered by the glare of headlights. A group of 4 stop their vehicle right outside the store so that they can watch and listen to the broadcast. The television is often left running even after closing, the general idea being to draw in potential customers. However, it can also catch the attention of people less accustomed to civilized methods. The glass window shatters under a single strike, exposing everything inside. 2 plump hands reach through the gap, grabbing the television and lifting it from its stand. I just wish I could punch him in his perfect teeth, a rotund Goliath grumbles in regards to All Might. The massive man resembles an ogre with his odd shape, causing him to hit the top of the store's awning. He stops to shake any shards stuck in the harness that's strapped to his head. A small spire pokes out from where his nose should be, giving him some resemblance to a rhinoceros. There's not enough pennies or fountains for that one to come true. One of his partners scoff as they step forward to grab a radio left on the same display. Their orange mohawk clips the tip on what remains of the window. Both thieves wear matching jackets that leave the chest exposed, the only difference being the ogre's is purple and the other's is blue. His face is also covered, but this mask is more of a muzzle with a green stripe down the center. Let's be real. Even if you did manage to land a blow, it probably wouldn't even faze the guy. A messy-haired blonde hops off the tailgate of a white truck. Unlike the other 2, this thief is wearing an equally white tank top. He does share a mask though, albeit his covers only the top half of his face and has 3 red horns protruding from the forehead part. Another distinct difference from his partners in crime is how much darker his skin tone is. Hurry up so we don't gotta worry about having the chance to find out. A 4th criminal with nothing but sunglasses to serve as their mask urges the other crooks from his driver's seat. The blue headband that he's wearing does a lousy job of absorbing all the nervous sweat running down his face. The getaway driver's quirk gives him elongated ears that stretch just above a tower of brown hair. They twitch as they listen out for any police, heroes, or witnesses. He buries his chin into the collar of a black turtleneck that has its sleeves cut off. Grab the shit and let's go. The biggest of the bunch tosses the stolen television into the loading bed with a huff. I'm pretty sure All Might only patrols during the day, so don't go getting your panties in a bunch over nothing. What a yar. Supercious. You got more of a chance to win Lotto 7 than run into him. The one with a mohawk packs the radio he took while reaffirming his partner's statement. I just got a bad feeling about tonight. The getaway driver anxiously tugs at the band around his head. Sweat buildup gets on his fingers during the process, which he proceeds to dry off by using the collar of his turtleneck. Judging by the way his ears constantly twitch at every sound and the way he turns his gaze towards anything that creates a gleam over his sunglasses, he definitely has a severe case of paranoia. You worry too much. I mean, just look at how we pulled off this heist. It was a cinch. The heavy-weighted member plops himself in the back with the stolen goods. A slight creak escapes the truck as it shudders under his mass. He waits for the ginger and the blonde to hop in as well before shouting, I can't believe it either, but we did it. Hell yeah. Let's hit up another place. A grin stretches across the tanned blonde's face as he slaps the side of the truck for emphasis. Their celebration is short-lived though. The rambunctious crew all turn as still as stone once they see someone drop down from above. The shadowed figure lands in a crouch, blocking the direction of the road that they intended to go. Who is that? The blonde is the first to recover from the collective stupor. Taking in the short figure's appearance, it only appears to be some punk off the streets. A black sweat jacket with the hood drawn up and matching cargo pants makes them seem like a casual civilian. They don't look like any kinda hero that I know. The driver strains his eyes as he tries to peer through the dark. Damn it, Hiro. You jinxed it. The one with the ginger mohawk slaps his chubby criminal partner upside the head before motioning for the driver to go anyways. Floor it. You, roadkill. The tan thief flicks his middle finger forward so that he can shoot their target, a bird. The three in the back let out a collective cackle as the driver guns the gas. You're dead if you think you can take on. A blurred flash of red is all they see before the truck is flipped backwards in one fluent motion. The hooded being never moved a muscle. Crimson appendages acted like a predatory organ, striking out from the base of their back. Streams of blood flick back and forth like a collection of tails, mimicking the behavior of something animalistic. Smoke begins to waft from the wreckage. Oil slowly leaks out of the crashed vehicle too, eventually creating a puddle that'll only continue to get bigger. An arm reaches out of the truck's shattered windshield, grasping for something that isn't there. Blood streaks down the limb, soaking the hand until it's scarlet and dripping off of twitching fingers. The hooded figure begins to trudge along the pavement at a sedate pace. There should be a sound of shoes scraping against asphalt, but only an echo of gentle footsteps radiate from its presence. They sway from side to side with each footfall, casually approaching the crashed vehicle. A groan escapes from one of the crash victims, the tanned blonde, as he tries to regather his bearings. Still disoriented by the constant ringing in his ears, he hardly registers the hooded figure crouching down right beside him. Suddenly, the third digit that had so carelessly flipped off the hooded figure bends and snaps under the pressure of what may as well be a set of fangs. That pained moan from earlier morphs into a shrill shriek as the blonde's finger gets severed from his hand. All of a sudden, the truck is turned over yet again. The thief with a mutation quirk used his strength and size to flip it off of his crew. The hooded individual instinctively leaps backwards, soaring through the air and landing on a nearby street post. A wet gag escapes the lumbering Goliath. His injuries leave him scarred and bruised, shrapnel sticking out of his flesh and bleeding wounds alike. He makes an attempt to wipe away some of the blood leaking out from a cut above his right eye, only to smear it across his forehead. The hooded assailant hums from their perch, eyeing the brute rather inquisitively. A long black bang hangs down from the hood's opening once they tilt their head to the side. Just staring at the chubby criminal is enough to make the hooded predator's mouth water. Blubber is worn like an extra coat on the crook, creating the enticing promise of meat. Saliva begins seeping from each corner of the carnivore's mouth once hunger starts to flood their system like adrenaline. Like a liquid muscle, one of the tails protruding out of the predator's lower back whips down with an effort akin to flexing. However, the force is enough to completely obliterate the streetlight, leaving behind a tapered post and a shattered bulb. This simple move is enough to propel the hooded figure forward so that they may clear the gap between themselves and the Goliath. It takes one aerial maneuver from the predator to twist its body around, allowing itself to vault over the criminal's head with relative ease. Then, the hooded hunter lands in a poised position from behind their prey. One of the liquid appendages itself back before striking like a cobra, piercing the criminal's right arm and threading it like a sewing needle. Joints in the limb are snapped in half while other ligaments get severed, resulting in a high-pitched squeal from what looks so ironically like a pig. Similar to that of an octopus ensnaring its quarry, another tentacle wraps around the burglar's left leg before constricting like a python. These liquid limbs remain resilient as their victim struggles to escape, regardless of how they flow in a fashion relatable to water. Effortlessly, the tentacles hoist the criminal upward so that he may be suspended over the hooded predator's head. Like a set of additional claws, the remaining liquid limbs tear into the victim's flesh. Wails of agony fill the ambience of Musutafu while tissue is torn open and meat is ripped apart. Intestines spill out and blood flows from the corpse like a waterfall, pouring straight into the hooded predator's mouth. There's a moan of ecstasy from the ghoulish being, regardless of how much gore overflows to the point that it splashes outside their lips. A short distance away, still stirring from their car crash, the tan thief attempts to prop themselves up on one elbow. The forced movement is so jarring that they instantly slump back to the ground. Next time he tries to move, it's much more sluggish and only something as simple as rolling over so that he can lay flat on his back. A sharp pain shoots through his side and up into his chest, the side effect of 3 broken ribs. Instinctively, he reaches with his hand to apply pressure, which leads him to discover that it's missing a finger. There's a small tremor that runs along his body as his quivering lips convey the pain into one single word, F. The blonde burglar buries his hand into the fabric of his tank top, not caring about how the white material gets soaked in red by blood. Other colors such as orange or yellow appear as splotches in his vision, indicating that he's already lost a lot of the bodily fluid. Momentarily, he clenches his eyes shut the same way he does with the shirt in his fist. Those iridescent spots remain for a short while, shrinking in size until they completely dissipate. When his eyes reopen, the dazed state of mind finally concedes and he's able to draw his attention forward. The first thing that he sees are his friends' remains being cannibalized. He repeats himself at a louder frequency this time, F. This outburst doesn't go unnoticed. The hooded predator whips its head towards the source of sound with a feral noise of its own. A startled gasp escapes the blonde's mouth when their eyes meet. It's like a drop of blood landed in the eternal abyss that you're told not to stare into, the veins that stem from it mirroring the reflection of a cracked conscience. As blank as the black void, this ghoulish gaze holds no emotion. It's the kind of look that you'd give an insect under a microscope, the prolonged glance that's never anything more than just that. It's that precise moment that a distinction is made clear between looking into a common criminal's eyes and a killer's. With a wet quelch, liquid talons detach from the mangled meat of their victim. Whatever remains of the corpse splatters against the ground as soon as it gets dropped. These fluid appendages slowly coil around their owner before redirecting themselves so that they're aimed towards the tan thief next. It's a brisk laceration across the neck and stomach that ends the blonde bandit's life almost instantaneously. Blood drains from the gash in their throat, followed by a dead collapse. With no further interruptions, the ghoul goes back to feasting on its quarry. There is no chewing though, only the gnashing of teeth as flesh gets devoured. Fingernails dig under skin like something that has to be peeled off before clawing at the same spot again to expose tissue. There's a handful of pancreas and another one of muscle fiber, both of which drenched in blood for consumption. As soon as any of the meat is swallowed, more gets stuffed into the predator's mouth. It's a rather noisy eater too, slurping on the intestines and inhaling everything else like a vacuum. From corpse to corpse, the ghoul feasts until nothing remains. Even the bone fragments get gnawed on, osane oozing out as munching subsides. A sigh of content carries condensation, the exhale drawing their shoulders into a despondent slouch. Suddenly, the dark chasm called an eye widens as though it's seeing for the first time. The crevices made up of veins retreat into a fluctuating iris. Like a reptile basking in the sun, they remain still under a pale moonlight. The ghoul then draws their hood down, allowing a maelstrom of tangled black hair to fall out. A doleful expression crosses their now visible face, not that it matters when no survivors nor witnesses can identify it as Akitani Mikumo's. He uses the back of his hand to wipe away all the gore covering his lips. No longer severely starved, he doesn't bother with licking it off. Another sigh, this one much more subdued, and then he's on his way. Akitani's leisurely stroll through Musutafu isn't the ideal midnight excursion, not when the only thing to see around him are eyesores. Dagobah Municipal Beach, what used to be a beautiful public spot is now reduced to a junkyard. Years of rampant pollution turned the coastline into something revolting. Ramen shops and stores that sell fine china were once meant for high-class customers, but months of vandalism leave them in a state of disarray. Graffiti cover the walls like a coat of paint, heaps of trash litter the sidewalks, and tires run over potholes in the streets. The skyline is a much better sight to behold. Building structures fill the inked atmosphere with their silhouettes, only occasionally joined by tufts of equally Stygian clouds. The pale moon that hangs like an unpolished pearl makes it all seem so monochrome, not a sliver of fluorescent chalk gleams through. A bitter breeze blows through the fabric of Akitani's clothes, making him seethe through his teeth while trying to suppress a shiver. Relentlessly, the cold continues to nip at his fingers, regardless of its withdrawn effect under how numb they've already become. Even so, Akitani stuffs his hands into the pockets of his hoodie as a futile attempt to ease it somewhat. Frigid feet make it a long journey to Uta's store, each step as though it's being taken into a shallow pool of water. Cold seeps into his toes and rises like a small tide to cover his feet, making them feel rather bare regardless of the red sneakers that he's completely worn out. It's a freezing fog that he breathes in, something that ices the marrow of his bones like wet concrete. Akatani's teeth begin to chatter behind his blue-tinged lips, making him miss the warmth of a victim's blood glossing over them. Almost immediately, that urge is expelled from his mind. It's as if it got flung out by the violent shaking of his head. Settling for lukewarm saliva, he sucks on his own lips to keep them from chapping. It's rather shocking when Akatani finds Himiko wearing nothing but her usual attire in such weather. A short skirt and a cardigan is hardly enough to keep her warm. The P-blonde's thin frame shivers every 2 seconds. Before he can ask her why she's outside rather than inside Uta's shop, Akatani-kun. I've been waiting, she provides an answer without question. You're gonna catch a cold standing out here. He shakes his head in exasperation while tugging at the bottom of his hoodie. Here, wear this before you get sick. Akatani then pulls it off so he can offer it to the bunned blonde. The boy was already freezing when he had the extra layer on, but now he's downright chilling to the core in nothing but a white t-shirt. The bilabial trill of a dismissive, PFFT, is synced with Himiko's eye roll. It's still summer time, Akatani-kun, she's quick to riposte but ends up taking the hoodie regardless. Certainly doesn't feel like it. Akatani shudders when another breeze rolls through. The gust of wind is enough to finish convincing Himiko that she should wear Akatani's hoodie. It's oversized on her, but that's probably why it'll do a better job of keeping her warm rather than its original owner. Uta's entrance is accompanied by the telltale jingle of a bell. Let's get inside already. Akatani takes a step so there's enough room for Himiko to squeeze by, but never once takes his hand off the door so it can swing shut. The blonde flashes one of her signature grins at him, a tiny giggle bound to come out of it. I guess the Tokyo ghoul kills everything except for chivalry. She gets in a good wisecrack as she skips by before allowing the cheeky tur to escape. Akatani's groan overshadows the slam of the door closing shut. Look. Akatani rubs the temples of his forehead while struggling to come up with the right words. I know we're here to literally pick up a mask for my alter ego, but could you try not to say things like that out loud? If you don't want it to be obvious, then you shouldn't wear clothes that reek of blood. The blonde shrugs with raised palms as though it were public knowledge. Seriously, she says while pinching the fabric of her borrowed hoodie, this thing smells like a brand new car, if it were used to run over an entire family. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.